everybody, welcome back to Expedition U. Here today with our good friend Boris. Boris, how you doing?
Good, thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Excellent. So, Boris, you are killing it right now. So I did the appropriate amount of stalking / lurking before you got here today, and so recently named one of the top 40 under 40 in Houston. That's that's huge.
Thank you.
I mean, it's like fourth largest city in the nation. To get that recognition out of this populace is not a small task.
Thank you.
Equally, if not more exciting to me, though, is one, the deal that you closed recently. So, and if I'm off on this, tell me. But it was a 235 unit storage complex.
Yes. Okay.
Right.
Yeah, that's my latest big acquisition, all cash.
Dude, America suffers from stuffdom, and I have said for years that if you want to everybody talks about mailbox money, right?
Yes.
Which really doesn't exist, but if you want the closest thing to it, it's got to be storage.
Storage is nice. Yeah, storage is nice, especially when it's turnkey and ready to go. It's just like, coming in. I really believe in storage because in terms of like bad terms like, recessions, people tend to condense. They don't really scale down. We think that we people would scale down apartments. You go from A to B and B to C. But what really happens is that people move in with each other, but they still have stuff. So they have to put it somewhere, and that's why people really like storage in terms of recession.
Well, and look at one of the 25 hoarder shows that's on TV. I mean, it just stands to reason people they like their stuff.
Yeah.
And they don't want to get rid of it. So once the attic's full and the garage is full, then I need a storage unit.
Exactly. Yeah, that's right.
Speaking of garages, tell me about this vehicle you recently purchased.
So I have a collection of 8 cars, and that's not even the latest one. The one you're thinking about is not even the latest one that I got. The latest one that I got is a 65 Shelby, completely customized.
Nice.
From Backdraft Racing over there in Florida. Very, very cool car. I test drove it. I think it's on the way here right now. Before that, and the one you might be thinking of is the 72 De Tomaso Pantera. Yeah, man. That's a straight
it's a sexy car.
Yeah. It's got like 700 horsepower. I think it's sick. Yeah, so I'm a huge fan of cars. I have, obviously the classics. I have exotics. So.
I did the math, and I shouldn't say this out loud, but I've been driving for, I guess, 32 years, and I've had like 35 cars.
Right.
So it's like a little over a car a year. I may have a car problem.
Yeah, same here.
So, Boris, it's all the stuff you're doing is amazing. But one of the things we really like to focus on, at least out the gate, is kind of give us the 90 seconds where you came from, where you're headed, and then we'll dive in a little bit deeper.
Sure. So I'm an immigrant. I was born in Colombia. My parents struggled a lot to get to this country. They actually had kind of like a weird, lifetime, because we were actually pretty wealthy in Colombia. My mom was a nice lawyer. She was a very prominent attorney, and was winning cases, back and forth. My dad was a geophysicist, so he was in Colombia.
You don't hear that a lot.
Thing, right? He was in oil and gas. And so what happened is that we won a case, or my mom won a case against the mafia, with Pablo Escobar's mafia. And they pretty much threatened us and said, if you don't leave the country, we're gonna just, your kids are
do
gonna
what we do. Yeah,
exactly. And so we came here, and when you get to this country, they don't really validate the career that you have in Colombia. So my mom started sweeping floors, and we honestly reached the bottom.
That happens a lot. I actually hear that quite a bit. I mean, especially, I was a doctor in India, or these people. There's a guy that works at the corner store that I don't remember, where did he? I think he's from Nicaragua, but he was a civil engineer, and he was running a cash register at the gas station.
Yeah,
that breaks my heart.
No, yeah, it's true. It happens all the time. Happened to my mom. She was sweeping floors and delivering pizzas and doing whatever she could in order to make ends meet. I was 11 at the time, but when I was 13, I lied on my ID, and I got a job. I think it was at the mall doing surveys and stuff like that. At the same time, I had already been experimenting with having my own businesses. I started my first business when I was 7. It was a food delivery business. It didn't really go anywhere, of course, but
you were just too early.
They
weren't ready for DoorDash.
Exactly. Yeah, they weren't. It was just too early. It was the 90s. But anyway, yes. So After that, we got to this country, and I, kind of started getting a job here and there. I've always just kind of depended on myself. I had businesses. I had an e-commerce business that pretty much folded in 2008. Then I had a car dealership as well that I did semi-okay with. It's the car dealership. Hats off to you guys who are in the car dealership world. Man, it's a lot of work.
I got a good friend that owns a Ford dealership, and I mean, it's a grind.
Yeah, it is, and especially in Houston, and humidity and heat and everything like that.
Well, that's a changing model too.
Yeah.
I mean, with a lot of what's going on electronically and e-buying for cars and stuff, and the land mass and the cost. I mean, you see, like my buddy refers to some of these as what they call mausoleums. These big dealerships, these grandiose things that like they built in the 80s, but anymore today with land acquisition costs and construction costs, it's just crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, the turn time to become profitable is long.
Yeah, it is. So you'd have to be established, and I found that out real quick during the recession. I did okay, and I sold my business for $50,000. And then I had graduated from college. I had sold my business. I had broken up with my then girlfriend, and so I said, you know what, let's go to London and get an MBA and just kind of wait this whole recession thing out. And so I went thinking that $50,000 was good enough to live, for the entire year, as it probably would be here, right?
Yeah.
But no, I ran out of money in 3 months. London is a very, very expensive city.
Wow.
And so I quickly became the poorest, the brokest student in all of my MBA course. I didn't have the fancy vacations that my peers were having. I had a big old laptop that was not even a laptop. It was a mobile desktop. That's how big it was. It was clunky. Same clothes, same thing. Interestingly enough, let me just say this. From my car dealership times, I found a belt in one of the trunks that I had just been using because it was kind of a nice belt. But then it became not such a nice belt because I just used it every day over there and I couldn't afford a new belt. So it was true. I had found that belt in the trunk of a car that I had flipped, and I was still wearing it like 2 years later. It was piece of shit.
From meager beginnings, right?
Yeah. So I was really the brokest student in the MBA course, and fast forward to now, I'm actually employing some of my peers. Yeah, I'm partnering with them.
So, you had a couple of things. I know Jack's a master's student. So Jack has an MBA. He's a registered nurse and a degree in biology.
Yeah.
Okay. And you said, screw it, I'm going to go do real estate.
Smart guy.
That's where the money's at, right?
Yeah.
But one of the things that you mentioned when we were listening to you talk a couple weeks ago, you were talking about forced appreciation. Explain to the people that don't understand what that is. I mean, so basically you're in real estate, but you're really in investing in general. It's not just real estate, right?
Yes. I kind of stick with what I'm good at, which is real estate. So let me say that. I am very contrarian when it comes to doing a lot of things. I don't chase cash flow. I'm an appreciation guy. I think cash flow is, like you said earlier, very hard to actually attain. The mailbox money that everybody seems to be in love with is actually very, very hard to achieve. And so I was, at first when I first started my career, and I started flipping my first commercial property back in 2013. I was seeking also to just make $1,000 a month. I was seeking cash flow. So I bought my first eightplex. This is after I've been flipping houses and it just wasn't my thing. So I started, acquiring property just so I could make a little bit of cash flow per month. And I was thinking, well, I have $15,000 coming in per month and I can just, take it easy. What I found was actually much better than that. I set up the property in a hard money loan. So I only came to closing with $10,000. The property was $140, and I put another $60,000 in renovation. All right, and then 12 months from acquisition, this is my very first deal. I had made $250,000 from the sale.
Wow.
And so that actually, opened my eyes and said, well, why am I chasing $1,000 a month in cash flow when I can just chase these bigger paychecks that are going to change my life, right?
And so in contrast to flipping a house, right? So you flip a house and it's only worth what it's worth. So explain how, so I'm assuming that $250,000 profit didn't come from having put in brand new countertops and everything else. It was about updating the property, then bringing in probably new tenants at a higher rent value, right? And so then you get your multipliers or whatever.
Yeah, yeah. So back then I had kind of thought the house rehab kind of way. So we had put in granite counters and brand new cabinets and like travertine walls, and this was the ghetto. You know what I mean? I don't really need to do that.
Sure.
But what I found is, yes, I over rehabbed. I was very inexperienced. It was my first one. I over rehabbed, but the nice side effect to that was that everybody wanted to rent one, so I could adjust the prices for the rents up. I started at $650, ended up at $750 per month for a one bedroom, which in 2013 was pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
And so what that did, and unbeknownst to me, was actually increase the valuation of the property a whole lot. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So I only noticed that I could stand to make a big profit once I I was seeking a refi, and then I had done the appraisal. And so the appraisal came back for 472 after my cost was only 210.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So I was like, nah, there's no way this is real. Put it up for sale, and I made $250,000. Like,
I'd like to do that again, please.
Yeah, exactly.
That's why you're really big on forced appreciation then.
That's why I'm huge on forced appreciation. I don't think it gets talked about enough by all the gurus out there. When people tell me, so how can I start doing that? What are you talking about? I'm like, hey, look, you could do what I didn't do, which is educate myself. Mm-hmm. I had the big aha moment after I was cashing the check, right, from the
a happy coincidence,
company. Right? Yeah, it was. And I was like, what did I do right? What did I do wrong? And so ever since 2013, my career has been about finding that out and then experimenting with forced appreciation. How can I increase the appreciation of a property so much that I could sell and make big chunks of money at a time? Mm-hmm. And then what I found further to that, as after years of doing that, was that cash flow was finally coming in, but just from me seeking appreciation. So it goes back to one of the things that I say, which is cash flow is only a byproduct of appreciation. You have to chase it first before you chase cash flow. And so a lot of people don't really comprehend that. I believe, obviously, because it's just, there's a lot of inexperienced folks out there, especially in commercial, that are seeking the wrong thing that gets sold to us way early in our careers, much like yourself, that you were, seeking to change a career. You were probably chasing cash flow as well. You thought, man, those guys live on $10, $20, $30, $40,000 a month free cash flow, and they just sit back and do nothing, right? But to get there is actually very, very hard, especially in residential.
Okay.
So real quick, is that one of the reasons why you lean more towards the active investor role instead of like syndication models and
Correct.
stuff like that?
I believe that I want to be the master of my own equity,
Mm-hmm.
And I want to change my own financial freedom rather than chase it as a group. If you put in, most of these syndications group ask for $50,000, $100,000 minimum. If you put that in, you're pretty much putting it in and just kind of locking it away for 3, 4, 5 years. You have absolutely no say in what happens to the property, or in your liquidity. If you ever find another opportunity to invest in, you can't take the
there's no withdrawal slip.
There's no withdrawal slip. It's not liquid at all. And so you have to kind of get stuck with that at the end of third, fourth, or fifth year. You finally get a nice chunk of change, usually about twice your money is what they like to go with.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, I appreciate time. So for me, time is everything. I want to be able to make $1 million this year, not in 5 years.
Right.
See what I mean? And so when I put in my money, I make sure that the property that I'm buying will pay me back in full and then get me back to that, break-even point at zero in less than a year, because that will indicate, at that point whether it's a good deal or not, right?
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I'll do that through several methods, keeping some, selling some. That's why I came up with my method, KSSSS, which means keep some, sell some, scale, which is different than BRRR, and what a lot of people know as the Burr method.
Sure.
I also disagree with that. It's one of the other contrarian things that I disagree with, because it doesn't allow you to scale. It's just one at a time, one property at a time. It just doesn't really work. You don't sell in any part of that.
That's not how you get to the 40 under 40 list for the folks at home.
Well, and the thing that I find is a commonality with successful people is there's the way that everybody does it, and then there's the way that the successful person does it, right? I mean, so you talk about, you know, the KSSSS or the Burr method. I mean, the Burr method is widely known, it's widely regarded, and a lot of people are doing that. But, you know, I think there's a lot of value in saying or being able to separate yourself from the pack.
Sure.
I mean, constantly, you know, and it's funny, this really kind of correlates. We're actually doing a book study right now on blue ocean. Are you familiar with blue ocean, red ocean analogies?
No, I'm not.
So the blue ocean analogy is making a market differentiator from yourself. You know, so the red ocean is a feeding frenzy, like when the sharks come in and they turn the water blood red. And it's because whatever somebody's doing, everybody else goes, hey, that's working, and then they all imitate it. And then now you're at competition with yourself.
That's right.
Whereas when you find that differentiator, which you obviously have, you become one of one.
Right.
You know, and so I think that's incredibly valuable. And, you know, not to discount what other people are doing because it works for them, you know, but it doesn't necessarily work at the scale, speed, or profitability that they ultimately could be achieving.
Sure. Sure.
It's
Absolutely.
the Cardone versus the Dave Ramsey.
Right. Yeah.
That's about as
Neither would I
contrary
agree
as you
with,
can
but
get.
okay.
Yeah, right.
Dave Ramsey has a whole like anti-Dave Ramsey group as well, just like that guy from Mad Money, Jim Cramer. That if you do the opposite of what they say, then it's actually profitable. It's I don't know, meant as a meme.
Well, I mean, I listen to a lot of Cardone stuff, but he also says, you know, never buy a house. And I'm like,
Yeah. I actually started following Grant Cardone way back in the day because he was saying a lot of contrarian things, and I really liked what he had to say. He had a lot of valid points, but he wasn't 100% correct. I agree. People shouldn't save up to buy a home. You're perfectly okay renting and then save to actually invest in assets, which will then actually, you know, okay, invest in cash flow or invest in appreciation, whichever way you go, at least you're investing, right? But the thing is that most folks fall in love with the American dream, which is they'll save, you know, an entire 20 years so they can afford a house, and then they're really renting that money from the bank. They don't really own anything until you pay it off, which
That's
is
a hot
30
take.
years, 40 years down the line.
well, when you consider the fact that the average home ownership is 5 to 7 years, then it kind of shows you that for most circumstances, it's a zero-sum game because as you mentioned, you're going to rent that money with the idea that you'll own it when you're 70.
Exactly.
You know, but in the meantime, 5 years from now, you end up selling it. Now, hopefully, it appreciated, you know, but I was like, I bought a house in July of last year, and it was like the time because I scratch my head because everybody's like, I'm going to sell my house. It's worth so much. The market's gone up so much. I'm like, yeah, but you got to buy another house in this market.
Right.
You know, we got very fortunate that we found a house in a great area that was several $100,000 underappreciated.
Right.
Because it was very taste specific, like brown walls with gold metal flake, and it was gross. You know, but it was on a golf course in a great area and the whole thing. And so I sold my house, pulled a ton of cash out of it, put it into this new house, but knowing that day one, I had a huge piece of equity.
Right.
That was the only reason I did it. Otherwise, I wouldn't have done it.
And you hit the nail on the head with that one. I completely agree with, okay, you want to buy a house, own a house, it's fine. Just make sure it has equity. You know what I mean? Because the thing is,
I
that
shouldn't
don't
do
rely.
3.5% down FHA, you know, with a 9% interest
Yeah,
rate.
I mean, it makes sense. You know, you don't have to bring a lot down. But that's where a lot of people fall short is they go get a retail house and then maybe count on organic appreciation to actually maybe come out in 5 or 7 years on top. Let's hope nothing catastrophic like the recession happens.
Sure.
But yeah, I that's kind of half-assed, if you excuse my French.
No,
you
it's
know?
fun.
No, that's
And so I really believe in when people ask me, should I go buy this house? I'm like, no, absolutely not. You're okay renting. You're okay living at your mom's house. It's fine, you know. It happens to everybody.
Just keep stacking cash.
Just keep stacking cash and then invest in assets that are going to make you even more cash. Now, if you were really following my advice, I'd say invest in commercial assets, you know, 4plex plus, which actually will get you forced appreciation, you know. And so, but yeah.
So how hard is it to find those deals right now, though? Because like every third investor, because I deal with a lot of investors, you know, so I came into the market in 2014, but was really paying close attention to 7 and 8, 9, and knew from the day that I came into real estate, I wanted to obviously work with buyers and sellers, but I wanted to surround myself with investors because either way, you're I won't say you're market proof, but you're positioned,
Right.
right? You know, because when it's an up market, down market, investors come out like cockroaches. You know, nothing against investors, you know, but the thing is they're looking for those deals. You know, but at the same time, there's a lot of people that we're going into a very unique market right now.
Yes.
You know, we were talking about this at our sales meeting this morning. You know, normally you've got one of a few different situations. You've got an abundance of inventory with a lower buyer pool. We know what that is. We've seen that. Or you've got what we had the last few years where you've got low interest rates and a ton of buyers and not enough inventory. But we're walking right now into a lack of inventory with really high interest rates.
Mm-hmm.
And
Correct.
I don't know that we've seen that.
Yeah, back in the 70s, I believe it was called stagflation, where everything was still expensive and interest rates were expensive, and it was like that for some time.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's probably even worse because at least you'll have, at least prices came down and inflation is so high or whatever. Maybe interest rates are high, but prices came down. That's what they're hoping will happen, but we haven't seen it yet. Yeah.
No, and matter of fact, we just had a meeting with one of our people the other day, one of our lenders that said that there possibly another rate hike coming in November.
Yeah, I believe it, and then there might be another one in January. But it's like everybody asks me, like, what do you think about this current market? I say, well, look, it's always a good time to buy a good deal. If the deal is penciling out with a 9% interest rate, from the bank, then it's probably going to be a good deal because the only thing it can do is come down from there. I really don't think it'll go past 9, maybe 10%, because that's a lot. And I really think that at that point they will be hurting the economy.
Oh, I think standards of 8s will hurt the economy.
Yes.
I mean, because the thing is, what we have to remember is, you've got this argument back and forth because over 40% of our buyers are under 40, right? And the last time we had a 9% interest rate, they were in middle school.
Right. Yeah.
Right? I mean, they haven't seen anything other than 2, 3, 4% interest rates. So this is ridiculously high, I get that. But then you have this other generation that's saying, back in 85, we were paying 13%.
Right.
But there's a disconnect there, though, because of the appreciation in values. A 322 at $85,000 at 13% was livable.
Yeah.
That same house is not $85,000 anymore. It's $385,000.
That's right.
At 9%. That's not equitable.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't work out, especially with wages the way have been kind of stagnant for the last, God knows how long. Yeah. And it has nothing to do with the minimum wage. I think it just wages by themselves just haven't moved a lot. People get kind of slammed with more work and stuff. That's pretty much what my friends in the corporate world say anyway. So you have no other choice but to invest, right? And so if you're going to invest in anything first, I would say invest in your own education. That's when people tell me, look, I saved up to $10,000. What do I do? Well, invest in yourself. Invest in your mind. That's the biggest asset that we all have, right? Because nobody can take that away from you. Up, down, sideways, market, doesn't really matter. If you're actually educated, you will figure out a way to make a deal happen. That's why I say it's always a good time to buy a good deal, only if you know what you're doing. Right? So I've been buying property, commercial property. I was buying in 2019. I was buying middle of the pandemic in 2020, last year, this year. It doesn't really matter to me because if the deal, like I said, pencils out, then I don't really mind.
Yeah, numbers don't change.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this. Obviously, I'm assuming you have a team of people that you work with.
Right.
So you have your own team office. I mean, what's your structure look like?
So I have Sanmore Investments. It's two companies in one. On one side, we own and operate, over 500 units of multifamily, 235 units of self-storage. And then on the other side, we broker commercial deals. And what makes us a little different is that we package it up. We package the deals that we sell with a hard money structure. So what we do, like for example, instead of us telling you here's a 12-unit apartment complex for $600,000, you figure it out. Instead, what we're doing is saying here's a 12-unit apartment complex. Bring us $25,000 at closing, and the deal is yours. The purchase price, the rehab money and the education is all kind of included in that package.
Okay. So, and Jack has this question, and he's going to kind of use you talked about forced depreciation.
Yes.
And he was mentioning he would love to hear how that statement and that methodology translates into building people around you, the forced depreciation of the individual.
Absolutely. So I'm a big believer in value add or added value, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I that's what I love doing lately. Honestly, thankfully I've hit a good stride in my financial life. So I think right now what makes me happy is to add value, and so especially in my team, I'll go in. I'll obviously, in addition to all the stuff that I teach constantly to them. I will actually kind of guide them and say, okay, well, if you do this and do that, you can get your own property, right? That's kind of like my thing. Is I don't really believe in investing as a group. I believe in self-investing, active investments, and so I will add value to them as much as I can. I'll say, this structure your life this way and that way, and then you can afford your first fourplex, and then from then on you can scale up to an eightplex and so on and so forth. Especially those folks that pay, taxes. That pay their taxes. That don't have any assets to depreciate on their taxes. I would say the very first thing you could do is, for your financial life, is buy an asset which you can depreciate, right? And you can appreciate when it comes to actual real numbers.
That's awesome. And that's something that I think not a lot of mentors are willing to do, as far as, like, hey, I'm going to help you go find this deal. Because it's like, a lot of these people, they want every deal.
Right.
Right. And it becomes that I don't want to say money hungry or power hungry or whatever. But the thing is the ability to be willing to let go of an opportunity to raise somebody else up. Right. I mean, and you're still in a better position by association, but allowing them those wins. Because, I mean, that's one of the reasons that we work with a lot of new agents here. Is I'm passionate about watching them grow.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great.
And we've got several success stories here in the office. I mean, when I came into real estate, I was 40 years old. I sold my house, sold my business, sold everything, and maybe it was my midlife crisis. I didn't get a car. I got a new occupation.
Yeah.
But then 3x'd my income that first year, and it's grown since then.
Amazing.
And so I want that for other people. The people that didn't go get the MBA, that they would be an amazing ditch digger,
right,
or they can be an amazing agent.
Right.
They have the work ethic. They're not in the right room.
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
So what is next?
What is next? So our company is expanding. My investments are expanding. I have property in Miami. I am buying property in London. That's where I went and got my MBA.
Nice.
London and England work completely different, right? But we're acquiring property there anyway, because I believe it really is the most recession-proof city in the world. Aside from that, we are growing here in Texas, buying property in San Antonio, Austin, and Dallas, as well as brokering property there.
Austin's an expensive place right now.
Yes, very expensive. I own property right there on Lake Travis, and I'm hoping to develop soon, so we'll see.
That's good.
And Florida is just full of multifamily. For you multifamily lovers, Florida is like the place to go. And so that's definitely a market that we intend on expanding to.
So, I mean, now will you set up offices there? I mean, that's the great thing about the day and time that we live in, is you can do everything electronically.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't have to go have brick and mortar to buy in Florida or London or anything else.
You don't, but I prefer, if we're going to broker there. I mean, to buy, and operate, no problem. But if we're going to broker, I believe that still the face-to-face interaction of local buyers is very important. So we do, and we will have agents in San Antonio, Austin, Dallas, as well as the 3 counties in southeast Florida.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. So how can people reach out to you?
So please, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out at me. I have an email, Boris, Boris, @ sanmore.com. That's SANMORE.com.